We've got some
Hey, I'm Luis.
And I'm Luis.
And you're listening to the Content is Profit podcast.
We spent the last 4 years learning the strategies and techniques from some of the top marketers in the world on how to create content that turns into profit. And today, we're bringing them to you so you can take action immediately and start creating real content momentum.
If you'd like to learn more about how to turn your content into profit, go to contentisprofit.com. Oh, yeah. We're so excited for today's episodes. You know why? Because today's guest is what people would call a boss.
Yeah.
We actually came across one of his pieces of content and immediately thought we need to have him on the podcast. Today's guest speaks our language.
And no, guys, we know we're not talking about the language of love, okay?
We're talking about the language of content. Yes.
Absolutely. So you guys get a better idea. Today's guest has built a 7-figure brand messaging and video advertising business. He has worked with companies such as Clickfunnels, Teachable, and the few, the proud, the Marines. Total boss move, guys. Total boss move.
Yep. So not only that, but he has received the 2 Comma Club Award for making over 7 figures in sales. He also launched a video advertising campaign with millions of impressions that got retweeted by the one and only Donald Trump. He is just an incredible entrepreneur that quit his corporate job that he actually liked to go all in on his dream business.
Whew. I don't know about you guys, but I am so pumped up. Please welcome host of the Visionaries podcast, founder of Content Supply, and total boss, Mr. Dallin Nead.
What's up, everyone? How you doing?
Welcome, Dallin. We're so excited to have you here, man. Thank you so much for coming.
Yeah, bro.
Yeah, of course.
We're excited, man. I know, I'm gonna take this one. It's my fault. You know, we literally changed dates 5 times, and I completely apologize. But it's amazing. Thank you again for being here live on the show with us, and I'm extremely excited to actually, share your story, share what you do, all these little nuggets, and so on. So, you're tuning in from California. Is that what you said?
Yeah, Los Angeles.
Oh, baby.
Sounds nice.
Yeah, sounds
City
nice.
of Angels.
City of Angels.
And face masks.
Yeah, and face masks. Yeah, sorry, Fonzie. You're not an angel or have face masks right
I
now.
don't. That's why I'm not in LA, guys.
Dude, Dallin, tell us a little bit about you. I'm very curious. A job that you liked, and now your dream job. So that's go hand in hand. How did that happen? What's your story?
Yeah, great question. Well, how long do you have? No, I'm joking. So
let's make it happen. 24-hour marathon.
Yeah, 24 hours. You can go live forever, I'm sure.
I'm sure.
So definitely my story is interesting because a lot of us entrepreneurs, I'm sure you guys can relate, ditched the 9-to-5, ditched the commute because you didn't like it. You had a boss you didn't like, all those things, and that wasn't really my case. I enjoyed my job. The brand was incredible.
Yeah.
My coworkers, my boss were all great. But I felt like there was something more to my career. I wanted more autonomy. And so I was in a 9-to-5. I was working for several cruise brands. I was traveling the world, producing films, video advertising campaigns, and doing incredible projects. But then I was like, part of me, I was living in LA, and I was like, I'm making okay money, but I'm not making too much to survive living in an expensive state.
Exactly.
So I started freelancing on the side, kind of testing things out. I started a business, did it wrong, closed it down, and eventually I started working with different entrepreneurs who just connected me different ways and introduced me to this whole world of online entrepreneurship. I was like, oh my gosh, this is possible. I can do this thing. I could do my own business, which I didn't really know I wanted to do in specific detail. I thought it was going to come 10 years down the road.
Yeah.
And so it really it was interesting because I wanted to do a lot more even more interesting projects working for my previous employer. And this is 2.5 years ago. But I felt like things were like stifled. Like you had the corporate bureaucracy, you had limited budgets, and so to chase this autonomy and freedom, I was like, well, why not, like, I'm already making more money working this second job, my second business. Why not just ditch it? And so I did, and haven't looked back since. You know, it's been its fair share of struggles, but in the business I started, by the way, speaking your guys' language, I called it content supply. I was really inspired by this idea that our message is the most powerful way to connect with our audience, to sell products and services. And the best way, and really the only way to get your message out there, is through content, right? Video is my main language of content, but your message can be shared through other types, be that podcast like we're doing now, / video, the written, design, the list goes on. And so I was like, well, why not supply business owners with the content they need to grow their business?
Yeah, I love it. And let me tell you, I love the name Content Supply. I mean, the positioning in there is perfect. Like, if you didn't have like a slogan, any headline or anything, I would already know what your business is about because of the name. And it's amazing, right? I think that just right there's a lesson for a lot of people that are always thinking, oh, what am I going to name my business and all this stuff? Like people that are starting, right? That they might be focusing on their logo, right? I went on your website, your logo is Content Supply. Like that's it too, you know? Yes. So that is so important because immediately paints the picture in the prospect's head that's visiting, is saying, hey, this is what we can do for you, which is absolutely amazing. And I have a few questions here.
Before you dive into that rabbit hole, because I know that you will. And let me talk. Thank you. Okay. All right. Dallin, dude, I feel so exactly right. Thank you, Fonzie. Don't play on his team. I'm kidding. Dude, Dallin,
I'm a team player.
All right, there we go. I feel so identified with your story on the dream job, right? And the company that you worked for. And I had the very similar experience. I used to work in the fitness industry, and at the same time, we were running this thing on the side. And they gave us massive opportunity. They gave us like these resources to be able to do it. But at the same time, even though I was loving that job, I was like stopped, or we were stopped by the bureaucracy of corporate, we're like, oh my God, there's so many limitations here, right? So we're like, hey, if this is not, we cannot execute here, let's go ahead and do this thing full time, and we're having a blast, right? So it's okay. I think like your story is very powerful because there might be so many people out there, right, that might be starting something, that might be investing in content, might be creating their own thing, their own, position in their own business, but they still love what they do, and that's okay to sometimes pivot a little bit and move towards what they actually will call their dream business or their dream thing, right? So thank you so much for bringing that point home, because we don't have to like be completely fighting against the job that we currently have. That's okay.
No, not at all.
Not at all. So thank you so much. I'm actually gonna save that story in like a little basket here to share with some people. And this is now, Fonzie. I just wanted to make that point. Yeah, I can go ahead and do their questions.
Awesome.
All right, there we go.
First, I want to talk about, like you mentioned that you actually started a first business and it failed. I'm curious about that, right? Because I don't think I heard that in the podcast that I was listening. So, what did that failure meant to you? Because you went on and then started a second business, right? And I feel like a lot of people might get caught up in one failure and then quit forever.
Yeah. So a little bit of context before I started this first business. After I was with my corporate employer, I had no business experience, at least like no academics. I studied IT, of all things. I was going to go and be an IT person at the company, and then I ditched that as well. And so I didn't really have the business experience apart from just doing little odd jobs and kind of entrepreneur type jobs since I was young. And so the approach of how to start a business, I did it kind of backwards. I thought the way I approached this particular business, I called it Time Capsule. And it was going to create documentary films for aging families, like couples. I think the intention was great, and there's films because I was doing it for a lot of people in my personal network. And I was like, oh, I like this kind of like, it's like a hobby. It kind of scratches my creative storytelling itch.
Yeah.
But it wasn't a product or service that people were actively asking for, let alone willing to pay for. And that was my first mistake, to think I can make a business out of it. And so just the harsh reality is like, oh my gosh, like once I started learning more about the proper business structuring and the steps you should take to actually have a successful business, people need to pay you money. And the only way they're going to pay you money is if you're actually solving a problem, and you're solving a problem in a way that they're willing to pay you for it. And so I was thinking that I was doing that, maybe not in those terms, but I absolutely wasn't. And so there's no cash flow. And let alone like, it is a struggle when you have a full-time job. I was working like 7 to 5 basically every day, trying to fit it in and like get the structure in place. So it was overwhelming already. And so by the time I closed it down and was like admitted to failure, I still had like a safety net of my employer. And so I probably for another year, I just kind of stopped kind of a lot of entrepreneurial things altogether, just kind of taking a break, focusing on my day job. And it really wasn't until I was like, okay, like I'm ready. Like what's next? Like how do I do this? So I started, and actually, to be honest, is like I need more money.
Yeah.
that was kind of the first motivator.
Nothing wrong with that.
That was definitely our motivator as well, you know, when we started. And I would risk it out here and say that is most people's motivator when they start the business, right?
Yeah.
You can't say it's just I want to impact the world and change people's lives. Like, no, I don't believe that's the first reason most people get into business. Yeah. Like you gotta make money, you gotta live. Yeah. And that's like one of the, like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. That's one of the basic needs you got to fulfill before you can go to self-fulfillment, which is at the top. So
yeah, absolutely. No, I agree with that. And what you just told me kind of like ties to the next question that I wanted to ask, because you were talking about when you started your second business. Now you kind of like found the importance on the messaging, right? Like that importance of the messaging, and you wanted to help others find their message. So when you tell me this story now that you said, like this business wasn't selling, I'm curious, because do you think everybody, a lot of people are like, follow your passions. You can make a business out of your passions, right? And now you tell me like there's actually some businesses that maybe are not gonna work, and it's okay to quit and move on to the next one, right? And it came to mind that example that Russell Brunson gives when he gives some of his speeches, that even a guy that has like a tour for Bigfoot sells, right? Through webinars or through Clickfunnels. So I'm like, wow, that is interesting. So do you think it is actually a messaging thing? So if you would have had the knowledge of messaging and all that stuff running your first business, do you think you could have made that work, like positioning yourself differently? Or do you actually think there might be some businesses that are not meant to work whatsoever?
I mean, some businesses, I would say, are probably not meant to work, but it doesn't mean you can't pivot and make that work. Still within that same licensing structure. To be honest, like how you license your business doesn't really matter as much as what's built inside it. It's that's just a legal, paper-based thing. But for me, it definitely came down to the messaging. I just didn't have any clear messaging. Particularly one that spoke my customer's language. And so in adjusting that approach and recognizing as early as possible, the better you can clarify your brand message, the more you can know how you can create offers and, products and services inside your business. Yeah. Because your message will guide that decision. It will give you language how to talk about your customers, how to talk about what you do. And it'll allow you to understand, I can pivot this way because I know my messaging will resonate like this. Like I can create this course. I can sell this physical product. I can offer this service because I understand how my customers are experiencing this story that I'm helping them transform.
Yeah, I love it, and I think, sorry, Daniel, I'm taking over here.
You good, bro. You can do a solo show. That's fine. Nah, it's all good.
So one of the things we experienced when we started creating content, right? And we've talked about this story before. It took us about 3 years for us to get in front of the camera and finally start creating content. But one of the benefits is that we nailed down our message, right? We spent 3 years, filling customer avatar forms, pretending this was our dream client and this was our message, and changing our offers so many times. But when we started actually talking, it was like a filter, right? Like our message got distilled, like a good whiskey, and it actually turned into something good. And now we know exactly what we do. So I'm curious, when did you find out about the importance of messaging? What was that moment for you that like click in your mind that you are like, oh, like messaging is like probably in the top of the list when I work with my clients, right? And then how do you clarify that message? Because you were talking about it, right? Like you need to clarify the message. How do you do that?
Yeah, the epiphany that I experienced as far as recognizing the importance of messaging came after I started Content Supply. I was more in it from like a little bit more heavy on the artist side of like, I love filmmaking, I love advertising. And so I knew content was a vehicle to sell. Yep. Video was a vehicle to sell products and services. But what I recognized was that content is always going to change, right? Like VR, hologram, like augmented reality, like that's the future of a lot of content. It's very going to be experiential.
Yeah.
And so, video is going to evolve. Like audio is an important thing right now. But what's timeless, what's never going to change is the message and how to create a clear message, because the hundreds and thousands of years ago, the message is how it was delivered. And oftentimes it was in person or written down based on what content was available at that time. Technology is accelerating how we can, trial all these different types of content. But the more we can focus on having a clear message, content is generic enough to be relevant to the changing types of content. And another thing too is I recognize, like, so I've always been a storyteller, and I feel like definitely a story is a way to make yourself stand out, like having your unique story told.
Yeah.
But also the thing with messaging or storytelling and often messaging is it's not super tangible for people. Say like, oh, you put $1 in Facebook ads, you make $2 on the back end, so it's like that's tangible, that's measurable. A story or like messaging is not as tangible. And so I wanted to make sure that it wasn't just something fluffy, like another buzzword of story, and that messaging served a clear purpose and was essential before you really could do marketing effectively, let alone create content that was actually impactful. And so, yeah, go ahead.
Oh no, continue. This is like I was just gonna make a quick reflection, but I can wait for like 2 more minutes.
Oh, okay. Oh, and just to speak, so you asked the question too, like clarifying your message. The overview to me and the structure that we do in Content Supply comes in 3 phases. The first one comes down to messaging. The second one comes down to marketing. The third one comes down to medium, which is your content type, which I have an agency, part of Content Supply, that does video advertising.
Nice.
And so the more that you can hit on those 3 phases of your entire strategy, your marketing strategy, the more it'll actually work for you. And so clarifying your message comes down to giving you the language, literally the words you can use in any type of content, that helps you understand how to simply talk about what your company does, how it does it, and why it's important to your customers. Yeah. And by understanding what language to use, then your customers will either be immediately attracted to your business or be like, hey, that's not for me. But hey, I think I know someone who this is for.
Yeah.
And so that's going to guide like how you script your videos or how you outline or script a webinar. The list goes on. So that to me, it just comes back down to like, how can I simplify the structure of planning, creating, and distributing content?
Exactly.
Love it.
I love how that word simplify, right? Because, we shared this in previous episodes, how we started with the show, and it was behind the concept of that minimal viable content, right? And at first for us, we recorded these 5 episodes that are still in the vault, right? Because we added a ton of friction. Like Mr. Perfectionist here, who's in a perfectionist in recovery, right? He's like, he wanted the 2 cameras, the lighting, the stuff, the audio, the perfect. And guess what? Because we added all this friction, that was never done, right? And then we're like, okay, how can we actually stay consistent over time? And we started Facebook Lives. And for us, that was like the least friction. Let's go video, let's do this. Like, because when you hit go live, that thing is published, whatever, right? So we started to notice that quality of the message is way better than the quality of the production at that stage, right? There's different stages that you can start playing with different things on the production side of things, depending on like who you're talking to or what's up. But for us at the time, to start getting that friction, that quality of the message, right, was more valuable than the quality of the production because of the conversations that we started having.
Let's
go. This is our lost brother. And now we have like 5 more brothers. So welcome to the family, man. But
well, no, it's funny. Like I use the phrase "message over visual," which you literally just basically said that, and I can totally relate with you from a perfectionist side because it's like you get the artist side where like, I want to look professional.
Yeah.
You know, because that means that I know what I'm talking. You know, like people would think you know what you're talking about, and it definitely goes a long way. But you know, think of all the impactful cell phone ads or videos, live streams that are out there. And so, and it's hard. It's like, honestly, it's still, I'm not completely over it. I just kind of am learning to deal with it. Actually, quick hack, I guess. I discovered, and you guys are doing it too, because we talked before we hit record. You're using Ecamm Live to live stream, right?
Yep.
And it, you know, you can pull my feed from Skype. You know, I mean, I think it's an incredible tool. And what I recognize though is what has held me back oftentimes from creating videos is the editing piece. And I'm sure many people can relate to that. It's like, oh my gosh, like editing or repurposing. I know you guys offer services like that, you know? And so because editing is a hold up, I was like, well, why not do some form of live editing? Like you don't have to do any post after the video is recorded, and you can just get the message out there and remove that barrier. And then kind of over time, right? Like you were saying, like, yeah, we're going to try this other feature and add all these things where some people notice, like me, but most people won't. But it's still, it kind of feeds our creative itch to be like, oh, like this is going to be fun as an artist to add this piece. So I'm kind of with you on that, like evolution of the tech and the visual side being added into it.
Absolutely.
But recognizing that it's you know, it's fun to put effort into those, but ultimately it shouldn't be the first focus.
Yeah, I mean, and sorry, Fonzie, now it's my turn.
No,
I'm sorry.
You got it.
That's okay. But it's funny because not sometimes, we actually go on YouTube a lot and start like studying these creators, right? And we go back like 4 years, and I want for people listening, right? Like it takes time, like, but it takes time of getting your message out consistently to start like nailing down your message, right? Cashing in, making sure that you're having these conversations that can turn into profit, right? And then you can start investing and adding those pieces on the production side, right? Like we didn't even add a webcam till an episode ago, and we're at episode 80, right? That's the thing, right? But the fact that we've been consistent with the show, with the relationships that we've been able to build, right, is allowed our business to grow on the other side. And just before this interview, we're actually chatting with a couple that they're amazing consultants. They work with massive companies here in the States, and they're about to go take a road trip for a full year with the whole family, right? And they want to go on this Sprinter van, and they want to start like recording their content and doing something with content. So they're like, guys, how do we do it? Like, what do we do? Like, how many views are you guys expecting us to? And I'm like, it doesn't matter. Like, so let's, you know, just document your journey and then have this show where you can actually bring outdoor companies. You have an awesome conversation. They can sponsor. You're a vehicle. You give them their content. And then on the back end, you have this relationship where then you can sell your consulting services to these guys. And that's it, right? There's more to this content game than just the audience itself. That's wonderful. That will come with time. But at the beginning, right, your message has to be on point and making sure that starts evolving and moving the wheel for you and for your business. So that, I think that over the past like 5 months for us has been a massive, massive point to that we've been trying to get across, right? To make sure that people start publishing consistently like you did, right? And then after that, yes, there's little pieces that you can start adding to improve the production, to improve the quality, to add people to the team and so on. And that way you can grow really good.
Yeah, I was actually watching a YouTube video before this, and the guy used the phrase "test, then invest," and I was like, "Ooh, I might be taking that one. That one is pretty good, right?" Because a lot of people tend to, I feel, use the invest first as an excuse, like, "Oh, if I have all this, I'm gonna do it." But I mean, we were victims of that. We had the camera, we had the light, we had the mics, and we didn't do it. Like, we literally recorded those 5 episodes, and then we spent over a year with all the equipment in the closet, just gathering dust, right? And it wasn't until we were like, okay, let's just do it live. Like, it doesn't matter, right? And the advantage, like, this was the Rodecaster that we have right here was part of the investment. And if we couldn't plug it probably to the computer right now and for it to record everything, we probably wouldn't be using it because it would be adding friction, right? So it's about that. It's like, okay, how can I remove the friction when I'm doing certain things? So talking about friction, right? I'm curious about friction in your business. What are those challenges, right, that you find with your clients when you're trying to, get them to not get them to buy the idea? Because let's say they already bought into the idea of creating content. That's why they're coming to you, right? But what are some of the challenges of nailing down their messaging and producing the content for them to, make them even more business?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I would say it definitely depends on the level they are in their business, where those who work with their agency oftentimes already have their messaging dialed in. Otherwise, they wouldn't have grown their business to where it's at. And so to me, like, messaging comes into play for those who are first into our world of content supply and who are looking for initial support. And so a lot of times the friction that exists really for any client at any level comes down to the time. And like, time, money is secondary, but time. And so I find when clients come to us, it's because they've either wasted time on video ads that didn't work to grow their business, or on a video crew who was they were artists over scientists with how they approach their videos. Or they try to do it themselves, and waste all the time. They try to train a team member, or they just avoided it because they procrastinated it, saying they didn't have the time to do it. And so I think time is definitely a major friction factor. And that crops up to each and every one of us. Yeah. Whether it's related to, getting our message out to through video. Is it still on, by the way? Oh
yeah.
My video turns off.
No, we're still live. We see you, man. We see a big smile.
Good. I saw it turn off my screen over here because I've got, speaking of like tech and friction, I've actually got separate cameras connected up over here.
Love it.
And so time is a big one, and that's often the case for most people. And then I would say, as far as getting your message out there, if someone's ready and they're like, hey, I've got no issues with showing up on video, then it comes down to just what they really need after, like, the friction is solved. They really need a mentor through the process. Because if someone wants to, like, regardless of the message being over the visual every day, people still want to look amazing on video or in their content. They want to sound amazing. Yeah. And so, especially from the agency perspective, when they're looking for a higher caliber of service, that's done for them, the more you can give that confidence that you're going to look amazing. It's still going to feel authentic to your audience, but you're going to look amazing, and you're going to be able to present, your best self. Yes. And so giving that confidence and that removing that fear of judgment that can exist if they say something wrong, or, it's kind of that, like, director. It's kind of like you're a film director from a video, inside videos, a film director who's working with maybe like a child actor. Not to compare clients to child actors, but child actors could have, like, maybe those fears of, like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing right. Or, a first-time actor, like, this is my first big break. I'm on this big project, and I don't want to embarrass myself or do something wrong. And so it's like, how can we help people feel comfortable and know that, they're in the right place and working with the right people.
Yeah, so cool. We actually have well, a fun story, right? Like a few months ago, we're like, hey, let's test this thing, right? And we posted on Instagram after a few days of publishing live. We're like, hey, we're looking for 5 people that we can jump on a quick call with them and help you with your publishing framework, right? And one of those people that jumped on the call, she works on the accounting side, right? And she's like, hey, I want to start publishing, and she's a woman, right? And we're like, okay, we need you to get like the content moving. We need to remove all friction possible, right? And we need to get your message out so you can start filtering things, like dial it down and so on, and see if people respond to this. She had a huge following, like even without publishing. So we go, okay, what does consistency look to you? So for her, it was 3 times a week, because that was the resources, that was the time that she had available to actually start publishing, right? And when we break it down, we're like, okay, how long are you gonna go live for? What are the topics? Like, just general sense, right? What are the stories that you're gonna start sharing? And she got all that, and we're like, awesome. Are you ready to get started? And she's like, what do I wear? Right? She's like, I don't know. Like, everything else was ready to go, but her limitation was the clothing, because hey, me as a guy, I can just put a hat on. And especially like the way that we think, it's okay. Like, I'll just go out and that's fine, right? Clearly, Fonzie doesn't even shave, so like it doesn't matter. But under her eyes, yes. Okay, so how can we remove the friction of, hey, I gotta look the best way I can, like possible? Perfect. Let's set up your outfit every Sunday, every Tuesday, and every Thursday, so you don't have to think about what you're gonna wear the day of the recording. And then just schedule your time so you can do your makeup and stuff, because for you, publishing is a priority, right? So we got to establish if that's actually a priority, just like you said. So I love it because, yes, when there's like those high level clients, absolutely, that experience of creating the content has also to be very enjoyable for them to continue to do it, right? And then if you feel amazing and your message is great, is on point, I mean, what's not to like? After that, everything is a win, right? Whatever comes after that, it's a win, because you're also going to start experiencing this process of growth, right? But it has to start at some level, right? Some people have the resource of time and they can do it themselves. Some people have the resource of money, so then they can hire a team like you guys, right, to create all these awesome content. So love how you bring both perspective, from somebody that's starting to, the big people client, right?
Yeah, I love that you mentioned to the fear of judgment, right? And I've said it so many times, like, publishing has so many pros on it. Like, honestly, I don't think I found a con to publishing, to creating content. And for me, one of the biggest ones is like, I mean, I already told you, right? We spent 3 years trying to create content, and it was actually because of fear of judgment. Like, I was afraid of putting myself out there. I was like, oh, what are my friends gonna think, right? If they see me online, and that lack of confidence on speaking of what I was learning, right? Like, hey, I want to speak about marketing. Just put yourself out there and speak about marketing, right? And one of the biggest benefits of publishing and creating content, just consistently just putting ourselves out here, has been that, like, the removal of that fear of judgment. It's like, hey, we're okay, right? Like, we're gonna share ideas now. We're gonna be silly, if we make a mistake, we embrace it. That's totally fine. And what we have found out is that, like, people actually enjoy that even more, right? Like, if we make a mistake, they laugh with us, right? And they're like, oh, dude, that's awesome. That was pretty funny, right? And that ends up building up our own confidence, which is pretty cool. So have you noticed anything like that in your journey or your customers' journeys?
Oh, for sure. And it's interesting because I probably worked with almost every single type of emotion attached to the content creation process, as far as getting people comfortable and ready for camera. And in some ways, it's even you're prepped even further when you help female clients, because, like, as you noted, the attention on appearance and looking their best is even more important for them, which is incredible. Like, I appreciate that. And so actually a lot of my clients end up being like lean more towards women because of the approach we do take that helps women feel comfortable, feel confident and look amazing on camera. And I find that definitely comes down to consistency in publishing, but also recognizing that your first video is not going to be that great. Visually it can be good,
Yeah.
You know, as far as your delivery goes, especially if you're live or if you're pre-recorded, you know, you got to understand that as you guys can, you know, totally relate, right? Like if you pre-record it, then you can edit out all of the mistakes and come off more polished. But if you're live like this, then you're going to get all the or mannerisms or the but guys, like each person is going to point out the odd imperfections in their appearance or how they deliver something over than anyone else, unless you know, like my wife points out things that I may not notice, and because she's a good critic for me. But no, so recognizing like you're always going to be your first critic, and then maybe your partner or spouse, but recognizing too that your message doesn't have to be 100% clear by the time you start publishing.
Yeah,
because that perfectionism will also like stop you from actually getting published, bring your brand voice and getting comfortable. And I was completely clear when I started publishing in some form. I started my podcast probably 2 years ago under a different name, literally just to invite people, have a conversation, and just to meet people online. Kind of giving me that excuse. And so in doing so, you're able to develop your voice, and then you can start to infuse your message better throughout each episode or each type of content.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You know, like part of the reason why we started the podcast too was like we wanted to meet cool people just like you, right? We're like, man, like what a better excuse, you know? Like when are we gonna get the chance in the world to, you know, maybe be in the same room or have a one-on-one conversation with these like awesome people, right? So I encourage everybody, like starting certain type of show, and it doesn't have to be a podcast. Like we created another one immediately because we're like, we want to have more conversations, and we created like this like little smaller size content is profit. We call it Content Bites. It's on Instagram Live, and we invite other entrepreneurs and we do like 15-20 minute live sessions with them. And it's absolutely amazing, right? It helps us connect, and at the same time, we're developing the skill of putting ourselves out there. And what you were saying is true. Like when we go live, we don't have to edit, so we ended up like embracing the mistakes. And at first, we didn't want to go live, and that was the friction, right? Because we would literally for one episode, we were like 10 minutes already in, and we're like, no, we don't like it. Let's stop it. Let's start all over again, and we will go all over again. So your confidence goes a little bit lower. It's like, oh man, I messed up. It's okay. We're gonna get it next time, right? And yeah, it just adds layers of friction, man. Yeah. It's unbelievable.
Dallin, I have a question, right? Like you mentioned, or we mentioned on the intro that you've done several campaigns, right? And we mentioned this topic a couple times. You know, when we first started the show, we saw a trend of different views, people like watching or whatever, right? And then we're like, okay, we actually have to promote the show, right? So to get more people to do it. So we started calling it content campaigns and different things, and it's been massive. It's been super fun to actually try different things and see what works, what doesn't. So I'm very curious to see, like, what do you think about campaigns? How do you look at them, and then how can a business can make the most out of that campaign?
Yeah, that's a great question. I look at a campaign through two lenses. The first one is a political campaign for your business, and the second one is really like you're launching a movie. And ask yourselves, okay, in these two types of campaigns, what actions and activities are taking? Because a campaign is a series of marketing activities that serve a greater purpose. Like political campaign, naturally, the candidate needs to get elected into office. That's the win. And that means the campaign was successful.
Yeah.
Maybe in your business, if you're going to launch a new product, it's asking yourself, like what would be successful? What would be that election? What would election day look like, right? Or that successful launch look like? And then how can I build backwards? So begin with the end in mind and build backwards, and plan out the series of messages that are needed to guide my customer from where they currently are to where they need to be ready to buy. And then as far as looking at the lens through a movie, movies are kind of a masterclass. The successful movies, masterclass in effective marketing campaigns.
Yeah.
Because there's a clear launch date of a new product, aka a movie, like a 2-hour movie in the theater, or maybe now like streaming is booming even more.
Yeah.
And so there's a clear due date, and so it's building backwards to know, okay, what are all these videos? What are these mini clips or trailers customized by platforms? What kind of press releases need to go out? Then you got the actors or some of the crew going on a campaign of sorts, traveling the world or country, or doing interviews in some sort. So there's an entire like orchestrated effort, all this effort coming from all these people related to the project, all to serve that launch date to make sure it's as successful as it can be.
Yeah.
And you got to believe too, and maybe people don't know this, but accountants are actually a primary part of a movie release. Accountants can predict and actually tell directors and studios, hey, you should hire The Rock mixed in with Jack Black, mixed in with Kevin Hart, like Jumanji reference, but
yes,
mix in these actors because that will be the perfect formula to have this kind of return. And so accountants are doing all this financial planning. You get the business side of show business to contribute to this successful campaign. And so no matter how you shake it, there's business strategy and marketing strategy behind every successful launch of a product of any type.
Yeah.
And so to me, it's definitely a series of activities, marketing activities, and content is just one piece of that overall experience to have a successful often product launch.
Yeah. I love it the way that you broke it down. We've heard several times about the movie reference, and since we've heard it, it's like, hey, let's actually pay attention what's happening, right? And for the time that we're recording now, my wife is a huge Disney fan, so she was pretty bummed that Mulan is actually not going to be in the movie theater, right? But it's going to be on Disney Plus, right? And they're talking about they're actually going to release it at a price point, right, to actually make the money of that. But the campaign has been the same, right? These artists have been in every single talk show. There's been like massive press releases. Every YouTube artist had been talking the behind the scenes or whatever, right? Is a series of events, leading to, the big one, like you said, like the due date, right? And I love that you broke it down as a political campaign, a movie campaign, because this can paint the picture for those that don't understand it. And you can, if you own a business or if you're starting to create these pieces of content to help you sell something, right? That moment when you start selling that something, that's your launch, right? That's your thing. So go out and take inspiration from this. And yes, content, like the one that you guys produce, like the one that we produce, are pieces to help you on that journey to actually have that successful launch. So thank you for breaking it down that way and paint the picture, because we feel like that's a topic that sometimes is nobody pays attention to it. They're like, I'm just gonna post this thing, and they're gonna do all the job, and I'm gonna be a millionaire, right? And it's not like that. It just takes a little bit more on every single part.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and definitely don't overwhelm yourself too, because I think
absolutely.
I find it interesting. I know we have a little bit. I find it interesting. Like one person I look up to is Bob Iger, who's soon to step down fully from CEO of Disney, and in his process of getting hired and placed in that role probably like 15 years ago was a campaign experience where he was advised by a political advisor to say, simplify your leadership action plan into 3 simple areas that you can basically go on the campaign trail, pitch, deliver, and reuse your same message over and over again, because messaging is a practice in repetition. Your audience is going to hear a lot of the same messages over and over again, maybe some tweaks in words, but they should be hearing this repeat messaging, because if they're not, that means you don't have a clear message you're delivering.
That's so awesome, man. I highly encourage people to go check out Bob Iger's story. Like, his book was amazing, and
it's so good.
It's so good. Just to start wrapping it down, Dallin, what are some action points that people can take like today to improve their content game?
Yeah, it goes back to messaging. I think we hit that pretty hard this episode.
I love it.
Is don't allow yourself to not create and publish if you don't feel like you're clear on your message. But the more you can focus on the language you use with your customers and get a really clear message going, the more your content will actually be impactful, attract the right people, and then put that into a marketing campaign. Understand how marketing works, and then your content will be more impactful, and you're not just throwing out random pieces of content just because you think you should.
Love it.
Love it. Now, two more. They're quick. One, I think is the most important part in this show ever. Where would you be if you did not start publishing?
Oh man, unheard and unseen. I think you would be. I would be the best kept secret, right? Like early on, I got connected with some key players who are popular in the online space in our communities, and if I didn't start publishing and interacting with people, I would be a best kept secret. And I think the more we can publish and put yourselves out there, the more that you'll begin to be recognized, even if it's by small communities of people. Like that's all it really takes. You don't need to be popular and known by everyone. But I think ultimately most people either secretly or very openly want to be famous in some way. Want to be recognized, want to be known, loved, and trusted. You can't deny that we want some fame in it, right? Like we strive for that power. And so publishing is going to make that possible for you.
Awesome, man.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. How can people connect with you? Where can they find you if they want to chat more about the messaging, about you? Where can they go?
Yeah, for sure. First off, before I say that, I do want to set the record straight. Your intro was incredible, but I'm not a two comma club winner.
Oh, okay.
People have to listen all the way to the end to get that clarification, but
it's all good. It's all good.
It made me feel good.
Come on, Fonzie.
I feel like I saw a picture of you holding it with Russell and.
Really?
Yeah.
Is that deep face app, bro? Is that the deep fake?
Yeah, maybe someone did a collage.
I was like, I'm gonna be one of those. I'll be one of those bro marketers who, puts visuals out there like follow me because I've done this. No, I haven't yet, but very soon, yes. But
we're manifesting. We're manifesting for you. It's all good. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. So it was perfect. Like I said, I could have said nothing, and I'm like, I'll just own that. I'll own that identity right now.
No, it's all good. Sorry, I think I cut off your links or where can people find you?
Yeah, contentsupply.com simply. That's where you can learn about everything we're up to, and then the same thing on the socials. That and then Dallin Nead.
Awesome, thank you.
Awesome.
I do encourage everybody to go contentsupply.com. I checked the page. It has a lot of resources. You guys have some awesome courses as well. Lots of blogs. So guys, go check him out because
so awesome.
I mean, after this conversation, you know that he knows what he's talking about. So you gotta listen to him.
Dude, Dallin, thank you so much. We're gonna say bye to the podcast audience. Don't leave yet. With that being said, guys, thank you so much for tuning into the Content is Profit podcast. Go ahead, don't forget to subscribe. Smash that subscribe button and follow us on social media at @BeastBrosco.
That is right, guys. And if you find this episode impactful, which I am sure you did, don't forget to share it and leave a 5-star review. Thank you, guys.
Let's go.